Okay, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to Torah with your host, Rabbi Aníbal Mas, wearing, you know what? I should say this. Wearing my favorite Chanukah t-shirt. Feliz Chanukah. Feliz Chanukah. Feliz Chanukah. Light every night the Chanukah. I wanna give you a crispy latka. I wanna give you a crispy latka. I wanna give you a crispy latka from the bottom of my heart. Okay, enough. Enough. You know what? I should record it.
You should. So maybe one Friday night or.
I should record it. Feliz Chanukah. It's very easy to find the karaoke of that one.
Yes.
I haven't done a video in a long time. So I should do it. Welcome everyone. And we are going to study a little bit of Chanukah today. Today will be more philosophical. Next week, God willing, it's going to be more practical just to get you all ready for Thursday night for the first candle, right? The only thing that I'm going to say today, and I did the same of my Choosing Judaism class, that I purposely taught Chanukah like 3 weeks in advance so they will have chance to get everything they need. One thing that virtually everybody failed is that people don't know that each member of the house need a Chanukiah. It's not one for the house, it's one per person. Okay? Just saying. One per person. So if you don't have one per person, this is your chance. That's why I wanted to say it today. Yeah, so you see we are here. You can see there, we have the table set at the Ready JCC here in Winnipeg, where we are selling Chanukiot, candles, Chanukah goodies. So come and get yours. Okay, so again, as I mentioned before, today's class is going to be a little bit more philosophical and less practical. Hopefully next class will be a little bit more practical, but we'll also have a little bit of philosophical approach to make it a little bit more, meaningful, right? It's good to know what to do, but it's also good to think why we do what we do.
Good refresher.
And there are many things I was shocked. The other day, my son came back home. He's a student here at Greek Academy of Jewish Education. Came home with a questionnaire about Chanukah. I felt out. How do I answer this? I have to go to the Talmud for the answers. I say, well, my son has a rabbi at home. What can you expect for the other kids? And then my son said, easy, you pay attention in class. And then you know the answers.
Well,
As for his case, I have to go to the Talmud to get the answer. Because I said, what is the best place in the house to put on the Chanukiah?
window.
I was going to answer that, but then question number two is, what is the second best place? Question number 3, what is the favorite place in Israel? Okay,
Oh, outside.
it's only in the Talmud.
No, I know, but certainly in Jerusalem, when you walk on.
It's outside.
the
It's on the
streets
main
at night,
main door outside.
or on the outside
Then
of the fence.
if you go to the Talmud, it will say, like, the best place is by the door opposite to the mezuzah.
Yeah.
Okay. Second place is the window. But in any case, it has to be in a public place. So tricky.
Jerusalem, when you walk down a residential street at night.
Okay, welcome Randy.
Sit on the doorstep and invite you to come in and have soup on a
So let's start with the class. We're going to talk about sufganiyot and all that. Even though, look at this. I got it, so it's going to be a practical class on how to eat it.
North
I just-
American
Yeah, we call it jam buster here, but nowhere else.
That's right.
It's jelly donuts everywhere else.
But in Israel, when you walk into a store or something, they have So good.
Anyway, I think Rabbi Ben Arosh sent a video from Israel last year.
He's here.
No, but he went to a store. He got a camera and started to walk through a long counter, all the different sufganiyot they had. It was unreal. As for me, as a good Argentinian, I like the one with dulce de leche inside. You can't get them here unless you make them yourself. Like my wife did it for me once. What she makes is the purim, the amentation with dulce de leche. Those are good. Okay, let's study Chanukah. Welcome back, Glenn. I hope coffee is good. So, let's start a recap of Chanukah to try to understand why we celebrate Chanukah. A recap from the Rambam. You know Rambam, also known as, what is another name from the Rambam? Moses ben Maimon. Moses ben Maimon, also known as Maimonides. Yeah, there is a phrase that the rabbis had is Mi Moshe le Moshe ein ke Moshe. From Moses to Moses, there is no other like Moses. It's like he was, yeah. Actually, Maimonides' secret is that he organized the information, right? He wrote the Mishneh Torah, for example. The Mishneh Torah is a compilation. It's similar to the Shulchan Aruch. It's just a book where you know what to do, when to do it. For us, it's not a big deal, but for him, having a book with an index was a huge deal. Right? I said, okay, what do I have to do as soon as I wake up in the morning? Well, look at this, page 32, you go there, you know what to do. Before that, you have to be proficient in Talmudic writings to know where to go and get it, because Talmud is all over the map. You will expect, for example, the tractate called Berachot, blessings, you will find all the blessings, but that's not the case. That's not the case. So, anyway, Maimonides. During the times of the Second Temple, okay, this is very important for us to place all the events of Chanukah in time. This happens during the time of the Second Temple, okay? When the Greeks ruled over the Jewish people, they instituted decrees against them and attempted to destroy their religion. This wasn't sudden. It was an evolution because the Greeks, they have multiple different approaches to what to do with the locals whenever they conquer a land. Most of the time they were very good at giving autonomy, but it depends who was in charge. Okay, eventually the rulers, now they wanted to kind of impose one way, and that's when we started to have the conflict with the rabbis, but before this point was not an issue. And I will venture to say that even placing certain Greek symbols inside the temple wasn't a big deal. Yeah, we don't talk much about it.
I guess not.
We also don't talk about even after the Greeks, when the Romans were there, we used to offer sacrifices on behalf of Rome and other things. Or Roman authorities, they will send an animal and said, sacrifice it on behalf of the Caesar, and they will do it. There were ways that they adapted to do that. In fact, the theory of what the Second Temple was destroyed is because they refused to do it, because you know the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Maybe we'll study that in another time, but there was a Jew who actually made a blemish on the animal that the Caesar sent purposely. So the priest will refuse to sacrifice it. Caesar will be offended and will pay back, right? So there are certain things we don't talk about. Anyway, they did not allow the Jews to study Torah or perform mitzvot. They took their money and their daughters. Do I have to explain what taking the daughters means? Okay, good. We're all adults here. And they entered and defiled the temple, where they violated its purity. What does it mean? What does it mean violated the purity? It doesn't take much. It's, for example, we all know the story of the oil. They said there was no oil for the menorah. Of course there was oil. But there was no oil with the seal of the high priest. This is kashrut even in this day. If you take a flight and you order kosher food for the flight, it's wrapped, right, with a seal. And what is wrapped with the seal, they can use the little convection ovens that they are there. They can heat your food and give it to you. But you have to be the one opening it. The flight attendants cannot do it on your behalf. If they do it by mistake, even if they don't do anything to them, it's not kosher anymore. So this is the thing. Back at the time, if the Greeks, they wanted to do something just to annoy the Jews, what they would do? Break the seal. The Jews can't touch it anymore. It's not kosher. So that's what they did. What they said, they violated the purity. All they have to do is to mess up with the seals of different things. The Greeks subjected the Jews to great hardships and pressured them immensely until the God of their fathers had pity on them and saved them. Okay? This is pretty much an introduction of the events of Chanukah. Because of this, the Hasmonean family rebelled against the Greeks, and the rest is history. We know what happened. They eventually won, and they were able to enter the temple, and they cleaned it. Okay? So, what happened here is that we have to remember that on Chanukah, we celebrate basically two miracles, which are
the oil lasting for 7 days.
okay. Miracle number one, the oil. Miracle number two, the what? Sorry, overcoming the Greeks. Yeah, the military victory that it was considered impossible in the natural, and it happened. So the interesting thing is that we are celebrating two miracles in Chanukah.
Three.
Sorry?
3 miracles.
What is the third?
That what's still doing this 2,000 years later.
Okay. Somebody said the third miracle is nobody caught the custodian putting more oil at night. And that's a joke from one of the custodians for Shari Zedek, from Gary. Rest in peace. Remember Gary?
Yes, I do.
He called me. He was in the building once, many years ago, and he was a little deaf. So I said, "Cantor, come here." I said, "What happened?" "I already know how the miracle of Chanukah was." So, how? I said, "The custodian did it at night." He will say that because, Friday night when people will go home, he will blow the Shabbat candles, for example, and stuff like that. So that's why he said what he said. So the two miracles. Now, the interesting thing about the two miracles is, let's start with miracle number one, then we'll talk about it. Let's talk about the revolt, the war. The initial military revolt was led by one Judah the Maccabee. Maccabee was the nickname, by the way. So it should be Judah the Hasmonean. Now, between you and me, guys, the Hasmonean family love and hate. Love and hate. Because on Chanukah we all celebrate them. Right?
The rest of the year.
The thing is, fast forward a couple of generations, they were totally corrupt. And because of that family, eventually the temple was destroyed. Okay? So the Hasmonean love and hate. The rabbis don't talk much about them.
Why?
Because
We don't talk about the bad seed.
because they were good for a generation. What did they do as soon as they won? They became priest and king. Oh, big no-no. You can't be the two together. The king has to be from the seed of who?
David.
David, not Aaron. And even if he's not the king of David, for sure not from the seed of Aaron. You cannot concentrate both powers on the priest. And we all know what happened because of that. So the rabbis didn't like that the priest became also king. Even at this point, there was already a dispute between rabbis and priests, which eventually was very visible at the time of the destruction of the temple between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Okay? The Sadducees, number one, they rejected the concept of oral law.
Yes.
The problem is, I think they rejected pretty much everything. They weren't religious at all, even though they were in charge of the worship. They were priests. Pharisees, there were many subgroups of Pharisees, but they all have one thing in common: they accepted oral law and they accepted rabbinic authority. The Sadducees said there is no such a thing of rabbi. It's an invention.
So why do
Again, fast forward another 800 years, the same the same two opinions were manifest between the Karaites and the rabbis. The Karaites kind of took over some of the Sadducee theology, some of it, because the Karaites were very religious. They were serious people. Okay, but still they rejected the oral law. But it's all coming from these times when immediately after the Hasmonean family took over, there started to be clashes with the rabbis for different interpretations of the Torah. Okay?
two questions, not necessarily connected. Why do some people think of the Pharisees negatively? Is it because they don't understand the history?
Well, I think it all came from the time of the trial of Jesus.
Okay.
So it's coming from those times.
Okay. And then the next question
You
is,
didn't give the question on to the people online. They wouldn't have heard what she said. What a question was.
Oh, why we usually hear about the negative connotation of the word Pharisee. It's coming from those days, but there were many different groups of Pharisees. But again, the only thing they have in common was the belief in the rabbinic authority. Okay?
so then the next thing I was going to say, going back to the earlier part of the discussion, was the separation of powers between what
Yeah.
we now call church and state, but between religion and state. That continues to this day.
Well, we know in history, every civilization that mixed the two is never a good thing. So, and the Torah got it right from the beginning, when that was split between the house of David and the house of Aaron. That's it. The only time that it was kind of a mix, like, was Moses and Aaron. Two brothers getting the two. Moses was the king, and Aaron was the priest, and they were brothers, right? But it was for one generation, because then we switched to Joshua, right? And then it goes separate ways. Joshua is not related, so.
But Moses relied on his brother and his father-in-law for help because he couldn't carry that huge load.
Oh, but that was for judging. And it was even worse, because before that you could see between Moses and Aaron, they have church, state, and Supreme Court.
And then wasn't the case like in the first century, the Sadducees, that they were the high priest not running the temple, were actually chosen by the Roman state.
Yeah,
So they were actually,
but that was all
in a sense, the state was controlling the high priesthood.
Eventually Rome started to have control over them, but it's all the remnant of the Hasmoneans.
Yeah.
That goes all the way to Herods.
That's right.
So, yeah, let's continue with this. So, Um, let's see. Again, was led by Judah the Maccabee. An epitaph awarded him for his famous battle cry, "Who is like you among the heavenly powers of God?" The word Maccabee being an acronym formed by the first letter of the above biblical verses. Mi chamo chaba elim Adonai. Maccabee. Judah was joined by his 5 brothers, all sons of Mattityahu, patriarch of the priestly Hasmonean family. Legend has it that a Seleucid general once described these 5 Jewish heroes as stronger than lions, lighter than eagles, and quicker than bears. Despite the extraordinary odds stacked against them, the children of Mattityahu miraculously succeeded in their battles against the Greeks. Without divine intervention, the enemy would have swiftly crushed the small band of religious Jews. Instead, after a short period of intense fighting, the Maccabees freed Jerusalem from Seleucid control and isolated the Hellenized Jews to the northern port city of Acre. Okay? Miracle number 1, we won. Miracle number 2. Finally, on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, in the year 165 BCE, the Maccabees returned to the temple. As they set about repairing all that has been vandalized, God had a second miracle in store. When the pagan Hellenists invaded, they desecrated the menorah and sabotaged the oil reserves. When the Maccabees finally regained control, they could find only 1 jug of oil fit for the lighting of the new menorah in the temple hall. The Jews used the little oil they found, and something extraordinary happened. It just kept on burning day after day. It burned for 8 days, even though there was only enough oil for 1, giving them the time they needed to produce new pure oil. Okay? We're going to talk more about this next week, and I want to show you next week how the 2 main sources that we have to let us know about Chanukah, each one of them chose only one of the 2 miracles and doesn't talk about the other. I have to come back next week for that. Okay, but for
one of the oil is not scriptural, it's more of an oral tradition, right?
none is scriptural. We don't have the book of Maccabees.
That's right,
That's right.
yeah. I forgot about that. I mean, it exists, but you're right.
Yeah.
But it's not in the book of Maccabees.
No, and the other thing that is,
That's
this is to me the most interesting thing. I think Chanukah is the most observed Jewish holiday these days. But it's a nothing. It's a nothing holiday. Started as a tradition. Next week, I'm going to read for you next week the source from the Talmud on how the Chanukah was observed at the beginning. And you will say, that's it. Because it was a nothing.
But it's easy and it's participative.
It's not easy.
Compared to Pesach, where you got to do
I think Chanukah became
friendly and kid friendly.
it became a big deal, an even bigger deal as the marketing for Christmas started to evolve.
And but also not complicated for the housewife in terms of getting things ready.
I think the sisterhood will disagree, but
Well, that's another story altogether.
hey, let's continue.
But I have a question before you go further. We have rules about the wheat that we use for Pesach, etc.,
The what? Sorry,
We have rules, for example, about the wheat that we use for Pesach.
we have rules for Pesach. Yeah,
The wheat that we
The
use.
wheat.
We don't have rules for the olive oil. The olive oil.
no, because it's not.
Could be any olive.
It's because it's not in the Torah. It's not in the Torah. Let's continue. Now, I will show you the source in the Talmud. Okay, the Talmud says, "What is Chanukah? Mai Chanukah." That's the way the paragraph in the Talmud says. Mai Chanukah. When the Greeks entered the holy sanctuary, they defiled all the oil that was there. And when the dynasty of the Hasmoneans grew strong and defeated the Greeks, they searched and found only one flask of oil with the stamp of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, that had been set aside. And there was only enough oil to burn for one day. A miracle occurred, and they lit the menorah from this oil for 8 days. The following year, the sages established these days for praise and thanksgiving. That's it. This is the Talmud. Masechet Shabbat, page 21b. Nothing about the war. You see this? When this was written, the rabbis already didn't like the Hasmoneans. They were already under Roman duress, right? And in fact, they had to write the Talmud because of Romans targeting rabbis. The Talmud was never meant to be written. So why would they give some good publicity to the Hasmoneans? They look for what you did. Now we have to write the Talmud. And maybe we are violating one of God's commandments, which is to keep it oral. If there is an oral law, it's meant to be kept oral. But they have to write it down because they have to choose. Either we write it down or it's going to be lost forever. So there is no mentioning of the Hasmoneans at the Talmud. So no mentioning of the war against the Greek. The other reason might be because they didn't want to, sorry, I'm going to use the word, they didn't want to piss off the Romans by talking too much about the revolt against the Greeks. Okay. Now, I want to go to the rabbis say, even though Chanukah is not in the Torah, what is in the Torah is the biblical connection or the historical connection, or no, actually, let me rephrase, the theological connection between Jews and Greeks. The rabbi said that there is a theological connection, and a connection that is meant to be. We shouldn't be at odds with each other. We should learn from each other. And that's why Chanukah is also very important, and we never talk about that. We never talk about, it's all about, the Greeks. They try to crush us, they try to destroy us, they try to convert us. But they say, whoa, hold on for a minute, because before all the events that we are talking about here, the tradition was always that Jews and Greeks are meant to learn from each other. And that's what I wanted to present to you. So let me read this. The conflict between Jews and the Greeks has its roots in the cultural encounter between the two nations. The relationship between Greeks and the Jewish ancestry is biblical, going back to Noah and his sons. Listen. While Abraham and the Jewish people are descended from Noah's son, Shem. Why? How do you say Shem in Hebrew, in English? What is the name? Shem. It's Sem. That's why we are Semites. Okay? Because we are descendants of Shem, Semites. By the way, all the names here, all the names are significant here. Because what is Shem? Name. In Hebrew, so if I want to ask you, what's your name? Mashimcha or Mashem Shalcha. Shem. Name. Okay? So the ones who know the name, now you start saying a little bit different, right? The one who dedicated their life to know the name, Semites. Okay?
Are we getting into a little bit of Kabbalah here as well?
This is beyond Kabbalah. Kabbalah will be hidden. This is how in the open and discussed outside Kabbalah. Okay? So the Greeks, so we descend from Shem. The Greeks were descended from another son, Japhet. In Hebrew, it's Japhet. Japhet. Okay? Let's continue. So, listen to this. Listen to this. Why is so important to understand who were Shem and Japhet, okay, versus the other sons of Noah. Genesis chapter 9 verses 18 to 27 says, the son of Noah who emerged from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japhet. 3. Shem, Ham, and Japhet. What is Ham?
Warm.
Heat.
Yeah.
Ham is heat. Okay? But have this in mind when I continue reading and see what each one of them did. Okay? Huh?
Hamas.
Well, but listen. Ham was the father of Canaan. Okay? These three were Noah's son, and from them the whole world was repopulated. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank some of the wine, making himself drunk, and uncovered himself in his tent. He was naked and drunk. Bad combination.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's interesting also, maybe this is for another time, how his response to tragedy was to get drunk. First thing he does after the flood. And I'm wondering how many people do the same.
Yeah.
Right? Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his brothers outside. What does it mean he saw his father's nakedness?
He was uncovered.
It's not just that he had taken his clothes off. He saw the truth of his.
Every time the Torah said that he saw her nakedness, it means that they had an attempt to have babies.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
But now it says using the same word, he saw the nakedness of his father, which implies rape. Okay? Same language the Torah would use every time that the couple consummated the marriage.
So how did Noah go from being like the most righteous person to now? Like
He was drunk.
Yeah, but why would he get drunk?
Oh, but that's another thing.
Truly righteous.
That was another thing it goes about like
Like that he,
nobody's safe, but
he's the most righteous person.
Yeah.
He can survive.
but nobody's safe from falling into addiction, especially after a tragedy. He saw the world being destroyed.
The belief that
He came out of the ark and it was nothing. Can you imagine that? Most of us cannot
I can
imagine.
imagine that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around
he was so relieved that
because I see him
that
as
the
this
event was
purely
over.
holy person that God deemed worthy enough to
I'm wondering how many of his
the race, but then he actually fell from grace.
I wonder how many of his friends died with the flood. I don't know.
Well, he told them he was building the ark, but they just didn't listen to him.
So let's continue because this is getting better. So Ham, he did that, and then he went outside, told the two brothers, he said, "Hey, come here. This is your opportunity. Dad is drunk. Have fun." Right? Shem and Japhet took a cloak and placed it on both their shoulders, and they walked backwards and covered their father's nakedness. They didn't even want to see their father. In fact, fast forward in the Torah, that is one of the commandments. Ervat avicha vervat imecha lo tiraeh. It says the nakedness of your mother and father you should never see. So you are not allowed in Judaism to see the naked body of your parents. Okay? It's a mitzvah. It's one of the 613 commandments. Go back. So so instead of doing the bad, the two of them, Japhet and Shem, covered Noah. Noah awoke from his wine-induced sleep and he realized what his youngest son has done to him. He said, "Cursed is Canaan. He shall be a slave's slave to his brothers." He then said, "Blessed be God, the Lord of Shem. Canaan shall be his slave. May God expand Japhet, but he will dwell in the tents of Shem." I don't know why the distinction between the two at this point. Let's Canaan be their slave. The two. So even though it's, blessed be the name of the God of Shem, but Japhet will be able to live. He said, Japhet will dwell in the tents of Shem. What does it mean to be dwelling in the tents of Shem? Well, that thought. The rabbis are going to explain it in a minute. Okay? Let's continue. Before we do that, you have to understand that let me read for you the descendants of Japhet, Genesis 10:2. The descendants of Japhet were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Greek, Yavan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. So now we learn that Yavan, the Greeks, are descendants of Japhet. Okay? And this is very important to know. Why? Because based on Noah's blessing to Japhet, our sages understood that the Greeks were possessed of certain virtues that they were worthy of Jewish respect. Because it says, hey, Japhet should be, or the qualities of Japhet should be inside the tents of Shem. So unless we understand those virtues, we don't know what is that we're supposed to take from them and make it part of the Semites. That's why it's important to understand what the qualities are. And the rabbis will talk about this, of course. Let's continue. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, this is now back to the Talmud. Listen to this, it's fascinating. The only language beside Hebrew that one can write the Torah, prophets, and writings is Greek. Of course, it was expanded to other languages after, but up to that point, he said Greek is the only language that we are allowed to translate. Why? What is the basis for the ruling of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? The verse that states, "May God expand Japhet, but he will dwell in the tents of Shem." This means the words of Japhet will be in the houses of Shem. Understand now what it says? That's why when it was the first invitation to write the Torah into Greeks, the rabbis went nuts. No, we can't do that. Well, maybe we should, but no, it's never done. Torah is supposed to be in Hebrew. And then the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel found a way to justify the Torah being translated to Greek. Because it said the Torah already prophesied that the words of Japhet will be in the house or in the shelves of Shem. So maybe we should allow the Torah to be translated into Greek. Right?
The thin edge of the way.
So, just as an anecdotal thing, you should know when this happened. The Greeks were the first culture actually to request a translation of the Torah into their own language. This occurred in Egypt under the Greek ruler Ptolemy II Philadelphus in the 3rd century BCE. You see, up to that point, there were different Greeks. The one that they were into a more collaborative spirit with other cultures around that they want to learn. They wanted other people to learn about their culture, but they want to learn about the cultures around them. Then eventually that changed. Okay? Hi.
Ptolemy was one of the more civilized
Rocky Pollack says original source rule. What is that? Original source rule. What is that, Rocky? You're always so cryptic, Rocky. It's always so cryptic.
Back to the beginning.
Okay.
Source texts. The source text in this case is the Torah.
Okay. So I wanted to tell you like, the Talmud writes how that happened, the request and everything. Okay.
Yes.
It says that King Ptolemy once gathered 72 Jewish elders. Gathered. You'll see why. He placed them in 72 chambers, each of them in a separate one, without revealing them why they were summoned.
Or arrested.
I guess they didn't have a chance to say
Or
no.
arrested or put into cells so they could pick.
Now, he entered each one's room and said, "Write for me the Torah of Moses, your teacher." And then legend goes that each one of them produced identical copies, that they all translated it the same way.
Because the Torah never changes. And it's
I don't know. I feel that that will be an even bigger miracle than the oil. To have it exactly the same, the translation. Oh, original source. Oh, okay. You see, Shelley Rock is explaining his words. He said, writers have to acknowledge. Original source rule, it means copyright.
Opposite, opposite, every term.
Copyright. In Hebrew, actually, there is a mitzvah. It's called Beshem Ombro. Beshem Ombro means that every time that you mention something, you have to say who said it. And the rabbi said, observing the mitzvah of Beshem Ombro brings redemption to the world. So,
I have to ask you a question before we go further down it. It goes back. Why did Noah curse his sons? Was he embarrassed that they saw him naked and covered him?
No, you only cursed the one who raped them.
who raped him? Yeah, Holy Mandelkern say, what a miracle. 72 Jews agreeing on translation of the whole Torah, word by word. Yeah. But the Talmud said that they were divinely inspired to do it.
Must have been.
Yeah. Eventually it was translated into Aramaic. In fact, the Aramaic copy of the Torah is still on certain books that if you go to Orthodox synagogues, they have the book for the Gabbai, the one who controls the Torah reader, and it contains it's called the Onkelos. Onkelos, if you ever heard the word, it said you will buy, for example, a Chumash, and it will say with Onkelos. What is Onkelos? Onkelos is the author of the Aramaic version of the Torah, and it's studied because he didn't do a literal translation. He do a more like an interpretative translation, so it helped future generations to understand certain words, because he gives you a little bit more. It's not an amplified version, because I know in these days you can have amplified versions of the Torah but like an in between, so it helps a lot to understand the plain meaning of the verse.
The Dead Sea Scrolls, some of them are in Hebrew and some of them are in Aramaic.
Which one? Sorry,
The Dead Sea Scrolls.
the Dead Sea.
Some of them
Okay.
are in Hebrew and some of them are in Aramaic. And if you read the Aramaic, which of course I don't, but that's a translation.
I'm surprised you don't. The Aramaic, yes,
Saw them.
but that was the language at the time.
We still have Aramaic in some of our prayers.
So let's continue. That was the King Ptolemy. But now let's move on into the Greek qualities that we should acquire. Okay, let's focus on that for a few minutes. According to the Maharal of Prague, famous guy who actually built the golem, for those of you who are into those legends, he said the central feature of the Greek nation or culture was their desire for wisdom. Hey, they wanted to read the Jewish Torah, and even if it's just to learn something, it's a merit.
They prized learning.
It's a merit. Okay, so the central feature of the Greek nation was the desire for wisdom. That is why they requested the sages to translate the Torah for them, as it explicitly stated in the Talmud. And this is a testament that they were more inclined to wisdom than any other nation. And I guess that includes Semite cultures.
Yeah.
We'll see. I didn't put all the things, but we were more into trying to connect with God and understand God than trying to pursue wisdom, right? But then what the Maharal of Prague will say here is that, well, but once you realize what you're lacking and you see that there is a nation that is dedicated their existence to the acquire of wisdom, learn from them. We have that all the time. Look at even when Jacob went to get Esau blessing from his father, right? Remember what he did? He put on the skin, and then Isaac said, the body is the body of, the skin is the skin of Esau, but the voice is the voice of Jacob. And the rabbi said, that's what we should do, right? Not to reject the material world, but to add the voice of Jacob within it. To be able to put the two together without losing the voice of Jacob. The Rebbe of Lubavitch, he wrote extensively about that concept. Okay, so this is just Maharal of Prague. And Rocky said, Golem is just a legend? And then he said, Santa never got an X-File episode. I'm taking your word for it. I never watched the whole thing. Maybe he did have it, and then we were all forget about it. Anyway, let's continue.
Except there's always one survivor who hears.
Okay, another text. It said, may God expand Japhet, but will dwell in the tents of Shem. So now, there is another rabbi who said, the beauty of Yavan, of the Greeks, now it's not talking about the wisdom, but it's talking about the aesthetics. Because the Greeks were also famous for aesthetics and paying attention to beauty. The beauty of Yavan will be in the tents of Shem. Hence, it is permissible and desirable to use the external beauty, the Greek language in this case, right, which is the beauty of the Greeks, as a helpful tool and as a means of obtaining the essence and inner core, which is the wisdom of the Torah and the mitzvot. That's another thing. Where did we learn the concept of Hidur Mitzvah? What is Hidur Mitzvah? To beautify the mitzvah. We don't just do a mitzvah. It has to be a beautiful thing, right? The Torah said you have to put tzitzit in the four corners of your garments. But we don't put a shmata. We put a beautiful garment with an atara and colors. Where did we learn that from? It's not necessarily from the essence of Shem. For Shem will be enough to put 4 tzitzit because that's all you need to remember God. But Yavan, the Greek, will say, yeah, dude, but make it nice. I understand you want to serve God. Why don't you serve God in a beautiful way? Well, because you say it's not my nature. So learn it.
But even before that, when they're talking about carrying the Mishkan and what the temple should look like, all the beautiful, the precious stones and the gold and the
But
woods.
isn't that what
Yeah.
Eric did? Eric Greekified the temple by making it more like Greek, like beauty.
Yeah, but that wasn't the bad part.
No, I know, but that was.
But that was the Greek ideal
But it
of
was
beauty.
the Greek ideal.
That's the Greek ideal
But
of
he
beauty.
used it in the temple, and it became just stunning, right? It just rocks.
Did you see the movie
Colonnade and
the movie Masada?
Yeah. I've been to the
No, but there is a movie, a very famous movie, Masada.
Yeah, there is.
It's not a new movie. Do you remember the movie Masada?
It's been around
With-
for a
with
long
it-
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as a part of the movie, they were afraid that the Romans will be easily able to overtake Masada.
Yeah.
And Eleazar, the leader of the resistance, he will say, no, this was built by Herods.
Yeah.
They will have a hard time. And it has and that's why they were able to survive there. They have cistern with water. They had everything they needed to be, why? Because that was Herod, the one who built it. And now it came against the Romans. It's very interesting. Okay. So, what was so bad about the Greek culture then? Right? You said, hey, it's a beautiful thing. We learn wisdom from them, or the pursuit of wisdom, right? We learn the beauty, right? Listen to this. Now we go to the Midrash Rabbah. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish explained the verse, and the earth was desolate and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And darkness refers to the Greek exile, which darkened the eyes of the Jews through its decrees. So basically the problem here was, number one, the fact that, and it's interesting that they call it Greek exile, even though they were still in the land of Israel. In the sense that you could be living in Israel and still being an exile when either by force or by negligence you stop fulfilling the mitzvah in pursuit of just secular wisdom and just beauty.
Well, the Greek ethos was antithetical to Torah.
So basically, it's not about all Greeks had so many good things, right? But the problem is, those things has to be in the tent of Shem, not to replace it.
Yeah.
It's not the same when you have a book in the shelf or the book takes over. So that's the thing here, and this is what I wanted to share with you about Chanukah, right? And why it's so important, because the Chanukah is the time where we remember the good thing, the goodies of the Greeks, but also the importance of reconnecting with the root of Judaism that comes through Shem, and to understand that what the Greeks brought to this world should be a supplement, not the main thing. It's like we need to exercise to be healthy, right?
Indeed.
But doesn't mean that you have to stop studying Torah, going to shul and praying to God, and instead going to the gym 24/7, which there are some people that they do. I see people here, they're here all day,
They do.
and they look great. But that's all they do, right? Or we know in these days how easy it is to get, well, I guess expert on marketing, they know, right, how we follow what we see. And they would design products that we don't need, but they would make you want it.
And once you try it, you'll
So anyway, so that's the thing. So and hopefully we're going to continue next week with all this. We're going to mix a little bit with the theory, but with what we do in Chanukah, we'll continue a little bit with all this, okay? So thank you everyone for coming today, and thank all of you at home. And remember, the class will be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time, if you missed any of it. Yeah, let's continue tomorrow with the second part of Chanukah. And remember, one Chanukiah per person, not per household, one per person. And in these days, the most common place to put it is in the window. Even though it's recommended to put it in the doorway, people don't see it. It has to be in a public place, okay?
used to be people had a electric Chanukah.
But it's not kosher.
No, they're not.
They're not kosher, the electric
I
Hanukkah.
don't think the women who bought them knew that.
No. I mean, you can have it, but you cannot say the blessings.
It may sound bad either.
Yeah, you can have it, but you cannot say the blessings.
Oh, yeah,
It has to be some kind of fuel. You can use oil, candles, even gas. But you have to light it, right? Yeah. Anyway, my wife was here. Hello, Dr. Ashira. Okay, everyone. Let's see if we catch my... There, look. Celebration, or just one? Or like this?
You're getting star rated, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone.
You're gonna
Have a good day.
photography.
Bye.